Hello, I'm Mike Boyce, Chairman of the Cobb County Board of Commissioners, and I've been asked to give a brief introduction about a video you're going to watch on the way ahead for transit and transportation. And this is a view from the 10,000 foot level of where we believe we're going to have to go in order to address this very important, if not existential, issue on transit and transportation, so that we can address those issues that are very important to the county. So with that, I'd like to take about 50 minutes of your time as Eric Meyer here talks about transit and transportation, and of course this will lead into a more informed discussion on this issue. So get a cup of coffee, sit back and relax and enjoy the show.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Good evening, my name is Eric Meyer. I'm with Cobb County Department of Transportation. So we're going to give a little bit of a transit and transportation update. As the Chairman talked about, we will be beginning our comprehensive transportation plan this April. We're going to conduct about 9 meetings to start out with. We'll also be out there at Taste of Marietta, Taste of East Cobb, a lot of other events, so look for us out there. What is a comprehensive transportation plan? So as the Chairman says, we do these every 5 years. This is a bigger dive than usual. There's a bigger transit element than we've usually done. We look all the way out to 2050. So Cobb today is around 750,000 folks. By 2050, we're projected to be close to 1 million. So that's a big increase. What do we do with almost 250,000 more people in Cobb by 2050? We then work our way back to 2040, 2030, and then focus, what would we do with the next SPLOST? So we look long and then come back and focus on what projects make sense for y'all in the next SPLOST. We're going to cover some other terms that we'll be talking about over the next 2 years, sort of to make sure we're all on the same page. Bottlenecks. I saw some of y'all coming up and looking at this bottleneck map. This is for the entire county. This really looks at where are the places that it's toughest, that you're most likely to sit in traffic at an intersection. So this is an intersection-focused set of metrics. You know, where are most folks sitting for the longest time and the most number of days per year. Up there on the slide, that's for District 1 and the top 40 bottlenecks there. Level of service. We use level of service mostly looking at roadway segments. So just like with your Google Maps app, green is good. Green means you're moving along about the speed limit. Red is bad. So what this does is this tells us during the AM peak, the morning peak, these are some roads in District 1 that we know from the data we look at are pretty lousy in the morning. Obviously, we're going to be talking to y'all at these meetings. We're going to be looking at other data sources and trying to see, is this technical analysis right? What are you seeing out there? What do you want to see done? So what do we do to improve the situation that's both good for transportation and good for the community that those road projects are in? A project type we're likely to discuss in this next CTP update is something called grade separations. Basically, this is one road going over the other or one going under the other. The issue here is, you know, Cobb has some pretty major roads like Cobb Parkway, Windy Hill, Barrett, Stylesboro, Roswell Road, you name it. And there's only so much sometimes we can do at these intersections to have double lefts, triple lefts, you name it, and still move people through these bottlenecks that are on the map. So we'll probably be looking in this next SPLOST at some locations where a grade separation might make sense. They're expensive projects, so we need to have a full conversation about this to see if it's worth it. On the transit side, some terms we'll be using include heavy rail. We have a picture of MARTA up here just because it's probably the most familiar picture of heavy rail for folks who live around here, but you could think of the subway in New York, the rail lines in Washington, D.C. Heavy rail is heavy because the track is heavier, the train system is heavier. Generally, they're known for carrying more passengers per hour than a light rail or other types of technology. Light rail, so by comparison, typically also called streetcar in some cases. We have that in downtown Atlanta. Other places have this like Portland, San Francisco. There are lots of other places that have light rail, so this will be part of the conversation. Bus rapid transit, or BRT, or some folks call it rubber tire rail. We'll be discussing that. What bus rapid transit tries to do is mimic the experience of light rail, but to use a rubber tire vehicle in its own lane. So you can see that's in its bus-only lane. We try to have more attractive stations, not just bus stops with a little stick in the ground and a sign. So we'll be discussing bus rapid transit. And so those are some of the big terms we'll be kicking around. Those are just a few. Folks like me, we have books of fun terms, so we will not go into more of those. I've been directed not to get too technical. So we're also going to be talking about not just what projects we think make sense for Cobb County's transportation system, but how might we finance those things. For transit, we could continue financing transit through our general fund. Our current budget for Cobb Link is around $23 million a year. As the chairman says, we've been in operation for 30 years. So we have a respectable suburban system. If we want to increase it, do we continue to go into the general fund? That's always tricky. Do we join MARTA under existing statute? It seems that if Cobb wanted to do that, we might have already done that. So that's probably not a likely option, but it is an option. We could contract with MARTA. There actually is an opportunity you could pay MARTA for service, but not join MARTA. It may be splitting hairs. The other option is under House Bill 930, which passed last year and was signed by the governor, Cobb County has the option to put before the voters a referendum to have a full or fractional penny sales tax for transit, and that would fund an expansion of Cobb Link if we so chose. And again, we can scale it to what we need. We could have a sales tax that just covers what we do today, so we take transit off the general fund, or we could say we need a little bit more. We need buses to Ackworth. East Cobb needs service again. So we could scale that amount of sales tax to whatever the public ends up thinking makes sense. For roads, fairly similar. Today, our road projects are funded with SPLOST, and then we usually try to match that up with federal and state dollars. But there are $0 from the general fund that go into resurfacing or major road projects. Our general fund covers cutting the grass and dealing with potholes, but no resurfacing of major roads or any intersection improvements. So we'll see what the 2022 SPLOST looks like and whether the voters have an appetite for it. The other option is something called a T-SPLOST. I know that gets that, ooh, no one likes hearing that. Back in 2012, there was a regional T-SPLOST. It went down in flames, not popular. The chairman does a much better version of that story. I wasn't living here at the time. I grew up in Atlanta, but I moved to another city for a time. So, but you're allowed to do a county-only T-SPLOST. So this wouldn't be a regional sales tax option. This would just be for the county. So we could explore, again, whether if certain road projects that we all agreed we needed didn't make it on the 2022 SPLOST, do we add some projects onto another list and fund that with a partial penny sales tax for just roads? And finally, as I mentioned, we could also fund road improvements with the general fund through bonds, through a bond or an annual line item, or some combination of all the above, or keep on rocking the way we've been going. Okay, so wrapping up, we're at the Town Halls today, Town Halls 2019. We'll be having a series of public meetings in April and May on the Comprehensive Transportation Plan. Again, we'll be out at public events. If you've got a group, a neighborhood group, or Rotary Kiwanis you think you want to engage in this, give us a call. We'll be there. We'll then be taking some time during the rest of 2019 to look at all that input we received, look at some of the technical information, and prepare what we think we're going to bring to the public in 2020 on SPLOST. So we'll be coming back to y'all in the first quarter of 2020 and seeing if we listened, seeing if we got a good project list. You'll let us know what we got right, what we got wrong, and then the board will deliberate on whether they choose to put a SPLOST on the ballot in 2020. And after that, we hope to adopt the CTP in 2021. There's the list of 9 CTP meetings coming up in April and May. These will be taking place at 7 p.m. with the exception of April 18th at the East Cobb Library. Will be at 6:30. So we've got some flyers in the back. Please pick them up. We'll be putting them up, putting it out on the website, and probably pushing it out on social media. So look for that. These are going to be some fairly interactive events. We're going to spend a few minutes at the beginning of the meeting explaining what we're up to, but then you're going to be at tabletops with maps, sort of pointing out where there are safety issues, where you think the traffic problems are, where you think the trail network needs to connect, all the above. So we hope to see you there. And with that, I will hand it back to the chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. So in the back of the room, we have these push cards that have the addresses of your commissioner and their offices, their emails, We ask you to pick one up. And remember, I was talking about the new service we have where you all have right-of-way mowing teams and things of that nature, pothole teams. This is how you get a hold of your commissioner and let us know what your problem are. We really count on you to review the eyes and ears in many different ways to make sure this county continues to provide the 5-star service you're accustomed to. So believe it or not, that's the whole presentation. We just want to give you a brief taste of where we're going, and both on the budget and on some transportation issues. We really want you to be involved in the comprehensive transportation plan, though, because out of the CTP are going to come the projects that are going to go on the referendum in 2022. And the reason we decided to go that far down the road is a number of the board members were concerned about having to foot a $400,000 to $500,000 bill for a special election in 2021, and also the perception that by doing this election in an off year, which 2021 is, we'd be gaming the system, trying to get people to the polls that were going to support it and everybody else would stay home. So by leaving the referendum in 2020 and in 2022 on the general election, we get the max number of voters to the polls, and that's a true measure of whether or not these referendums will be supported. But if we do our job right, and we've listened to you correctly in these various public hearings and town halls, everything we put in the referendum, we have validated this with you, and we've come back to ask you to make sure that we heard you correctly. So when you do go to vote on them in the referendum, whatever one it is, it's just part of a process where you're comfortable that we're all doing this together.